Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Strife's Sanctum. My name is Citizen Strife, and this week I'm going to talk about my favorite video game of this year so far, that being Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, or Like a Dragon 8. We don't have to call it Yakuza anymore, but it will always be Yakuza to me, so I'm going to constantly mess it up. This is one of those like Dragon Quest, Dragon Warrior type of situations where it's named one thing in one region, named another thing in elsewhere, and now they're coalescing to name it. Not quite the Final Fantasy thing where they name a different thing. It's just the naming convention. So from here on out, it's Like a Dragon, because that's what it was in Japan. So now we don't have to call it Yakuza anymore. So I'll keep slipping up. I just thought I'd mention that. But as far as this review goes, there will be spoils, and mostly to do with the fact that I've beaten it already. And it's kind of hard to dig into 8 without digging into Like a Dragon 1 or Yakuza 7, because it is a sequel, and it's kind of a retrospective of the entire franchise. Now, bear in mind, there are a few Yakuza games I don't know as well. I started with 4 and kind of ducked around here and there. It's been a while since I played 0 and whatnot. I think my favorites to this point were 4, 0, and especially 7. And 8 is an interesting case because it comes off the heels of Persona 3 Reload, which is a great game in its own right, expanding on the original game, as my air freshener goes off to annoy me, and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which was a really great experience up until it wasn't. But I'll talk about that someday. I don't know if I've actually reviewed Remake 1, but I will someday. But yeah, suffice it to say, of the 3 games, Like a Dragon 8, Persona 3 Reload, and then Rebirth. I'm sure there are going to be way more games. The thing about being a JRPG fan right now is it is good. Pretty much since midway through last year, there have just been so many that have come out. It's died down a little bit for the last month or so because all of them came out in the same window. The next one is Eiyuden Chronicles, which I have a fondness for Suikoden for what I saw, but I'm not like overwhelmed by it. And then you have stuff like Unicorn Overlord, which is super popular and whatnot. It's just good because there's good stuff. There's the Persona in medieval times, or Persona in a fantasy setting, Refantasio, there's so much. And that's not even counting some of the stuff last year that I may or may not have gotten into. But suffice it to say, this is going to be my game of the year without even having to blink an eye. Nothing about Persona right now is going to change my mind about how good this game was. And I don't know unless, Fantasio just freaking sparks a revolution or something, because it's Persona in a different setting. I'm going to sit here and say this is my favorite experience because I played 90 hours of it. I didn't have to, but I did. So I don't even really have to use a primer like I normally do. There will be a spoiler warning, as stated, because it's kind of hard to dig into this game without digging into the others. And that's part of its charm. But it doesn't ever feel like you have to. It feels more like watching a movie and seeing a bunch of Easter eggs for a bunch of things if you've never seen it. The way Final Fantasy IX kind of processes it. If you've known the history, you're going to get a lot out of it. But if you don't, it's not going to kill you if you don't. Because Like a Dragon does a few different things that set it apart from the other ones. Main thing being that in this version, in this game, you actually control Ichiban Kasuga like you did in the last one, but you also get to control Kazuma Kiryu. And it's weird because Kiryu should have been given his time to go away, but he never really has. because he's that tent pole. He's that Mario of this franchise. You can't seem to get away from him, even if you wanted to. And I like that Kasuga is his own character, and you definitely see it every time, because what happens is about midway through the game, while they've been together, they have to splinter off and do different things. Kasuga's in Hawaii, and Kiryu is in Japan. And you're constantly switching back and forth. And you actually end the game with Kiryu, so it's a bit of a weird situation. But this is as much as Kiryu's game as it is Kasuga's, because the story they're trying to tell is that this, for sure, should at least be the last one, barring some miraculous reason, because they contrived a reason to basically make it a eulogy for Kiryu in a way. And I'll come right out and say it, because I have the spoiler warning up already. Kazuma Kiryu has cancer. And a lot of what he's facing is his own mortality. He gets it due to reasons that Kasuga's team ends up dealing with in the majority of it, but his side of the story ends up being about realizing that as strong as he is, you can't outrun Father Time, and whether he got the cancer from natural causes, from smoking, or from the reason they gave him, which was some weird pollution bullshit, he has to face that, and honestly just refuses help. But he learns to have friends, so he works into the party scheme because he can't beat the shit out of everybody by himself, because he'll randomly have attacks and, cough up blood and stuff like that, and it's just not fun. Speaking of Kiryu, I do want to just mention it outward. I know that there was a lot of frustration over the person they picked for Kiryu's voice, and while I understand it, like Yongye, who is a YouTuber, about 1.5 million subscribers or whatever, his main thing is he does a lot of stuff about industry news, and usually in a negative light, because video game discourse is usually negative. Not always. Not always. But less negative than, say, James Stephanie Sterling or something like that, who basically cornered the market on that because, let's face it, video games are assholes, and almost in no cases are they actually reasonable people. But anyway, he was an actor himself, and he got some roles in some anime and whatnot. He's actually in a side role as one of the social links in Persona 3 Reload. But getting Kiryu was something that I think he got a lot of flack for, and I understand it. His voice doesn't go super low, so like my voice doesn't go super low. But at no time did I ever sit there and go, okay, this guy doesn't sound right. He sounds like what Kiryu would sound like if he was sick. Little higher pitched, but never so out there that I'm just like, I can't buy this guy as Kiryu at all. If you're a stickler for that, and on some occasions I've said that, like Maya Fey in the anime, for example, for Phoenix Wright, doesn't sound right. This is one of those occasions where it's like, he's acted fine. It's not as amazing a register, because again, you want the voices to sound exactly the same when you're dubbing it at most. But was I ever distracted and ever like throwing my controller and writing angry letters and tweets? Not that I'd ever tweet, because Twitter is stupid, but no. And again, if you don't like it, that's fine. I don't think it was such an amazingly weird departure that it didn't fit either. I never sat here while Kiryu was there thinking, oh, I want to play the Japanese version now. This is so fucking bad. Honestly, you ever think that if you just want to play the Japanese version, fine. These games were in Japanese until the most recent one, and I've said that the last game had really good dubbing, and it's like, if you listen to Kasuga, I don't hear anything wrong. Is it as good as Kasuga? No. Some of the other characters are better, but it's not like I'm going to, throw pitchforks or throw something at, on somebody's Twitter profile or whatever. If you're negative, that's fine. But a guy in his 60s no longer doing a role doesn't sound doesn't sound right. If it was his decision, sure. If it was their decision to get a younger guy, sure. Could they have picked somebody else? Yeah, you can always pick somebody. But they went with who they went with, and I thought it was fine. It's life. I dealt with it. And in like 5 seconds, I sat there going, huh, okay, whatever. I immediately accepted it. I didn't make a big fucking stink about it. Now, again, I don't know if people made a stink out of it because Kiryu was such a tentpole of this franchise, and it's like, no, you got it wrong. Forget it. Anyway, let's get on to the good stuff, which is everything about this game, pretty much. Because Like a Dragon is so stupidly full of amazing stuff. It just screams ridiculous amounts of effort. Kind of, again, in the same way that Rebirth has too much fucking stuff in it. Games that are packed with too much stuff are better than stuff that is half-baked and don't have enough. And because I like not overwhelming myself, but if I know that I just adore a game, I want to know everything about it. Unless, of course, it's a situation where, okay, I know that the main story stuff is better than the side questy stuff, because in most games, side questy stuff really just involves go fight a dude, go kill it. The Final Fantasy 15 approach, where all you're really doing is fighting more dudes. The Final Fantasy 12 approach where you're just fighting more dudes. There's nothing interesting about that. But this gives you a sort of story. They have you doing tons of weird shit. You're selling lemonade for some kid so he gets money to help a nanny of sorts. You find a giant Roomba that wants to destroy you, and then you help it. You help a guy who's trying to, from the first game, who was showing you these monkeys in a carnival show or whatever, and he ends up messing with these excavators, just weird shit. You've got the main sub quests, which are takeoffs of Animal Crossing and Sujimon. One I really, really liked, and one I really, really wasn't into. But I'll get into those when I get into them. But this game is so chock full of things. And so chock full of different types of people. They even have a dating app. They have a mini game for a dating app. They have a mini game where you're wandering around and just saying hi to people. So you get their social media profiles, and you get like a badge, or you get some extra items the more people you talk to them. It is so full of stuff. And of course, they bring back some stuff that they had, or they reinvent some of the things they had. It's so stupidly full of things. And that's not even talking about the main storyline, because the main storyline itself is very serious and grim and dark and a little cliche going by Yakuza standards, because it's kind of taking off on the first game. But never does it feel like it's not warranted, because it's a Yakuza game. How many different storylines can you do that are these evil guys are evil bad guys? And what do? I think one of the cool things is they actually add in VTubers in a way, and they make it plot centric, and it doesn't feel out of place, because you have these two older guys who are like, what the fuck? Like, several older guys actually who are like, what the fuck is this? Who does this person think she is? Why are people mobbing us in the streets and asking us for interviews like fucking leeches, rubberneckers and shit like that? Because technology's like that, because people are stupid. I remember the Persona 5 thing where somebody tries to commit suicide, and the first thing you see are these people with their phones trying to post it to Twitter or something. I'm like, fuck. So I guess it's a real thing that people want to see accidents, or want to see fucking people, the cancel culture bullshit, which is, we want to see people fail. We want to see people who used to say things that they want to say completely fail because they said the wrong word. Oh no. You can tell I don't really buy that bullshit. Twitter is so fucking dumb. I wonder if I've mentioned that, by the way. But yes, the idea that a VTuber has knowledge of these people and this like weird underground culture, they get into that. They get into who this person is and why they're doing it and how it all makes sense. And Yakuza, like a dragon, tends to be a lot of like layers upon layers of subterfuge and camouflaging what the real thing is. I don't think the end goal ended up being so amazing, but there's still so many weird things that are going on that you're just like, I want to be in this world. Kind of like the Grand Theft Auto thing, but for my sensibilities, because I like the Japanese style of game more so. Also because it is a JRPG, and it was just like the last one, and like the last one, the gameplay has been has been drastically improved. I actually watched footage of a streamer play the first game and then compared it to the second and realized they added way too much going on. So by and large, what is the story trying to tell you? Well, Kasuga is living his life after, a couple years and is trying to go straight, and is trying to help people. Trying to help Yakuza get on their feet just like he was, and they have their own jobs and their own lives. He's got this weird budding romance with Sayako, which I was not expecting because I don't think the first game ever dealt with it. But I'm kind of in on it because why not? If you saw Sayako in the first game, you're like, yeah, I'd want I'd want to try my luck too. But Kasuga, being a fucking moron, doesn't know how to do it. So the slowest part of the game is the intro, because they go the Persona 4 or 5 route where it's slow. It is very slow. As deliberate as the last game was. I think these two franchises are really bad about just letting people get into a thing and deal with it. I think this game is pretty bad because even the Hawaii stuff doesn't come in for another 3 hours, but even developing things like job changes and other things don't even happen wait until then. Sub-stories don't happen. I think it's like chapter 5 or chapter 6 or whatever, where you actually get a party, you can actually change your group, you can actually get new costumes and new jobs, some of them which are interesting, but by and large, it's the same system as the last game. So, deliberate is way too far. Because deliberate does a disservice to how slow this game actually is. I love it, and it is great, but it can be very demanding of your time. But if you can do that, and you already know that you're going to be paid off in the end, because this is the thing. I know that Persona games are going to pay off in the end. I know that Like a Dragon games are going to pay off in the end. If you are absolutely new to this style of game, where it's a lot of story and a lot of nothing for a while, it's going to drive you nuts. If you're a fast twitch person and you just don't like the game giving you story stuff, I would say a Final Fantasy Rebirth or a remake where you're spending at most 2 or 3 minutes in any one cutscene as opposed to 10 to 20 or even an hour building story stuff is not for you. It's the Xenosaga Metal Gear Solid 4 problem again, where we're telling a story, sit your controller down and either enjoy it or walk away. I hit my computer. I'm dumb. But yes, you get past that intro, which is a lot of Kasuga trying to sweep Sayako off her feet and doing it horribly. He ends up finding out that he needs to go to Hawaii because Sawashiro says, hey, somebody your mother is in Hawaii. You gotta find her for reasons. So he goes to Hawaii, and he ends up getting mobbed by a scam artist known as Tomizawa. But he's also scammed by someone named Chitose Fujinomiya. And they both scam him in different ways. But Kasuga takes it in stride. It's this weird dynamic where he can't hold a grudge to save his life unless he's directly opposed to them. He even if they ruin it to an utter extent, he will always try to find the sliver of hope. this guy he's like the patience of a saint and is willing to look at the good thing out of everybody because he was a fuck up. But even fuck ups have their limits. That's why he's different from Kiryu, because Kiryu is the strong silent type who has a face of concrete and outside of a few games recently where he doesn't really show emotion much, he just kind of lives with things. Kasuga's entire motivation is everybody's good, even if they fuck up, because you always get a chance to not be a fuck up. Let me be your best friend. He is the guy that wants to be everybody's friend, but not in such a way that he demands it. It's more that he sees it in you and wants to help you if you're willing to do it, and he will never let you down. And he's willing to look at Tomizawa and Chitose in spots in the game, especially with this weird web they weave in Hawaii, where it's like, why are you with them again? Weird. I don't know, but it's weird. And they slowly, their armor gets broken down because that's the sort of guy he is. He always seems to come out in the end. So he in Hawaii is going after Akane, and he has to deal with these different types of gangs, a different kind of cult here and there. But by and large, it's led by people who are either Japanese in descent, American in descent. You've got some people that are, I suppose I would call them Hispanics, because they're, I don't know what nationality the Barracudas are, but they build the Barracudas, and then you find Danny Trejo as Danny Trejo, because his name's Dwight Mendez, but he's Danny Trejo. Don't ask me how they keep getting George Takei and Danny Trejo and awesome people like that. The dude who plays Goofy is in this. I didn't even know he was in the first game, and then I realized it was him in the second game. I was like, what the fuck? There's actually a footage of Bill Farmer actually making that joke, saying that he couldn't get the pronunciations down for a while, but he was laughing at it, and he did the Goofy voice because he's Date in this, Kiryu's detective confidant friend guy. And I'm just like, that is him. I'm like, what? So yeah, you got Danny Trejo and Goofy like in a Yakuza game. I'm all for it. I love it. So Kiryu actually finds Kasuga before any of this shit goes down and says, okay, let me help you. So he's kind of weaving his own story, because there's a side game called Like a Dragon Gaiden, the man who, I think it's forgot his name or erased his name, where his whole thing, Kiryu cannot say he's Kiryu. He couldn't say it in the last game, can't say it now. He's got a new full head of gray hair. He's beaten down by old age, because they now say he's in his mid 50s and finally looking the part, because they never decided to. It's funny. Even when he was 20, he looked like he was 40. And now that he is 55, he looks like he's 45. But whatever. They finally decided to give Kiryu a new look. So it's weird how these games process themselves, because they always like, well, we want this character back, but he's 50 now, but we can't say no, so he looks like he's 40. And it's, some of these people don't look the ages they are. You just have to kind of accept that. But Kiryu's there because he's looking for Akane too, and you find out that all of these people are after Akane, and why are they after Akane? Then you learn why they're after her, and then you realize it's kind of interesting. So all these people were there. You got Chitose, who tried to scam Kasuga, Tomizawa, who pointed a gun at Kasuga, and you have Kiryu, who is still a brick shithouse despite having problems. And they are your main group for the first bit of the game. And circumstances go around where Kiryu has to leave and go to Japan because it's not healthy to be there, and he's mostly there to just recover and be part of Adachi and Nanba's party instead. So they realize that shit's going down over in Japan. So this is like chapter 7, chapter 8, give or take. And he ends up leading the main party of people that were there from the other game. So all the old friends are there. Adachi, Sayako, Nanba, Songhee, and Zhao. I believe Junki Han actually joins the Hawaii contingent, but he's the only one from that group other than Adachi. So you splinter the group into 2 groups, and for the remainder of the game, a couple of people from Japan go to Hawaii, a couple of people from Hawaii go to Japan, and Kiryu goes back to Japan and deals with it. So it's kind of a weird dynamic. So you have to balance out which party does where and who's in what group and who's in what party. But really, once you get it, you kind of know that they're your main parties and can work with it. But Kiryu ends up bearing the brunt of his own story, because his storyline, while it has effects on Kasuga's main thing with Akane and whatever's going on with Danny Trejo's group and whoever he's being led by and all this stuff that you learn, Kiryu has this thing where he is kind of paying respects to his history, mostly by force, because Date, aforementioned goofy character, Bill Farmer or whatever, he's kind of forcing him to face people of his past. He doesn't look the same. Nobody knows he exists, but there is an idea that he does, and it's this weird dynamic, because the thing with the last couple of games was you have to consider yourself dead. The problem is Kiryu is terrible at calling himself a dead guy. So everybody knows it's him, except he has the sneaking and terrible liar's mentality. He looks like Kazuma Kiryu, he sounds like Kazuma Kiryu, he is Kazuma Kiryu, but can't directly state it, because it would put all of his friends and family and whatnot in danger if the group he's working for finds out that he does it. But Date does it anyway and says it would be good for you to at least try to talk with people, or at least hear their thoughts, go around the world. And a lot of that stuff in his is about him reclaiming his name and reclaiming his memories. So he goes to Kamurocho, he goes to Ijinsho, and goes to these places. He even goes to Sotenbori on occasion. He will just, look at these things and say, okay, I remember this. So it's an Easter egg hunt of things and characters, and some of them get full-voiced scenes and things and little sub-stories of their own, where if you're a fan of Yakuza full and full, or through and through, you'll get every single reference. If you don't, and you only know the references like from 0 or 6 or 7, you'll still get stuff out of it. But more importantly, you learn about why this guy is considered a legend and why it is so important that they're doing this. Because they didn't have to do any of this crap. They could have just had him in this world, you're fighting dudes, be done with it. A 30 to 40 hour game, and it's just that. But Yakuza or Like a Dragon is all about having everything out in the world be at your fingertips and doing things and leveling up and whatever. And the access to minor video games or minor, like little poker games that don't mean anything, or race car driving, or Dondoko Island, which is Animal Crossing. They don't have to do any of this crap. But the fact that you can drop it, and most times do it, or the game will tell you, and this is something I enjoy, they will tell you, hey, you can't do any side story stuff right now. You have to be a certain level and a certain equipment range to deal with the enemies that you're going to be with. So you might want to do all your side questing now. You might want to level up all your gear and all your equipment and all your levels now before you tackle this story mission. I've never seen this. You have to be a recommended level to beat a certain thing. Now, there are varying levels, but by and large, if you're a level of a certain thing, you can handle that thing at that level. If it's 2 to 3 levels ahead of you or 2 to 3 levels below you, you starting to see everything be a little bit of a problem. You can beat the game around level 50 or 55. If you're really challenging, you want to do harder, change it around. But by and large, you can be level 50 and beat the game. But it's one of those things where I like that the game is telling you, hey, this is what we kind of set as the benchmark. If you're not there yet, don't do it. They give you a chance to get an out. They're not trying to surprise you. It does take some of the intrigue away. If it says you're level 20 and you're supposed to be in a level 13 area, you've leveled up to that point. You don't have to. The game doesn't really open up until you gain like access to the jobs anyway. And even then, most of the items that you're supposed to get are like level 5, level 6 rarity. You're not supposed to get until like chapter 8 or chapter 9, but you can get them, or you can get money. You can do anything. You can wander around for hours and beat people up. If you're 10 levels ahead of a guy, you do the Earthbound thing and you just go smack, dead. And it lasts 10 seconds. So little things like that are quality of life features that, should be a staple that work great. And I think the balancing act of this game being the super serious, hard-boiled Yakuza GTA kind of thing, mixed in with some of the goofiness that you get for the Dragon Quest stuff and the Japanese RPG stuff in general, and Kasuga's personality, mixes in well with the sub-stories, which I think veer on the more serious side of things, but also don't, because it doesn't take itself too seriously. Like a Dragon in general doesn't take itself too seriously, that it's not willing to just laugh at itself and say, yeah, we totally did that. We don't care. Do you like the change in tone, or is it not for you? It's fine. You don't have to. As far as the systems in general, sorry, I'm just making sure that the timer's working. I can never tell if because there's always been kind of an issue with my software if it's going to break or whatever, so I always make sure that it's still going so I don't have to re-edit this crap in the future. But by and large, the system from the last game has not changed. It is still kind of annoying how characters weave in and out and move around. I like the dynamic movement, but I also hate it because you're trying to set up a thing, but you can't. The benefit of this version is you can finally tell what an area of effect does. So you have the circle around you, and it will tell you if you're actually attacking a circle or attacking in a straight line, and who you get to hit with a bowling ball type move or whatever. So you see what a line is, what several enemies is, what the circle is of an enemy or of a skill that you're going to do. And yeah, the enemies changing their skill sets and their position is kind of annoying, but that's kind of how, in a way, Chrono Trigger worked in that same sense. They're taking little things from other games and saying, okay, we didn't show you the area of effect before. Now you know specifically what you're doing. Attacking a single person, attacking the entire party, healing the entire party. The biggest problem comes in trying to heal the entire party and not being able to kind of work around it. But sometimes your characters will actually run to a certain character, catch multiple characters they weren't in because the area of effect is now centered on them, so you can actually heal everybody. That's one of the major issues, is healing. You get standard healing items and whatever, but you really need a healer, especially later in the game. So as much as you like to change around jobs, you still need a dedicated healer, whether it's a hero, an idol, a geodancer, etc. Somebody, the homeless guy who I think is also kind of like mage / healer kind of thing. You need AoE. These guys don't fuck around later in the game, and you do need a healer, so you're kind of stuck. But by and large, with how your party is set up, for a while, your party is going to be the hero, the cabbie, the heiress, the whatever, the Dragon of Dojima. The Dragon of Dojima itself is an interesting class, because Kiryu can change, but there's no real reason why you want to change from the Dragon of Dojima, because he is in himself 3 different subclasses. So he can do fast punches and multiple attacks. He can do weapon attacks, because when stuff is lying on the ground, you'll get a little icon that says, yeah, I can use a weapon attack, or I can use a tag team attack, and let's go. His normal attack strategy is using beat attacks. So if you're in a context-sensitive area, like say a bike rack or something, or a corner of a wall, he can use part of his SP or something or whatever and just use the action and then do more damage to an enemy that way by doing that heat action. So it's kind of melding the brawler stuff Yakuza was known for with this new system, and they do it very well. In fact, later on in the game, you can actually, they make a big deal out of this here and you can't miss it. You can actually press a button and his limit break is basically turning the game into a short brawling Yakuza segment where you can use buttons and just mash them into pieces. And they do like Mortal Kombat style like damage sequences too. So they thought of everything. And guess what? Kiryu's the only one that can do it. That's the cool thing. He can break the laws of physics because in game they actually give you a reason why he would be into this whole standard, JRPG structure. Being around Kasuga has made him feel messed up, and now he thinks everything is a JRPG as well. It's he gets in on it, and it explains why he thinks the same way and is under the same restrictions to a point. But then he gets to break those restrictions for about 10 or 15 seconds. But 10 or 15 seconds of him punching dudes can make or break a fight if you're careful enough. But the other thing about the job system is, much like the last game, it's all about elemental weaknesses and strengths. Not so much in the same way Persona did it, just in the terms of damage. They add in a guard mechanic where if an enemy is guarding, you need to break their guard with what are known as grapple maneuvers. If you don't have a grapple maneuver, you can't do as much damage. But then they also have resistance to certain types of damage. Every enemy has a weakness, every enemy has a resistance. And once you figure that out, you can kind of gear your party and their attacks to a certain style. Certain ones do different things. A samurai is going to be mostly slash damage with a sword, but they will have some grapples. They will have some piercing attacks. They might have an elemental attack. It behooves you to cover all your bases, so that you know what the enemy is going to do or what they can handle, so that you can pile on the damage, because they can soak a bit of damage, especially some of the later bosses. But that's where the Hello Work and the Hawaii tours come into play, because you can actually unlock new jobs via that system. Some of the new ones include Housekeeper, which is a lot of water-based attacks and AoEs, but you can also do fire and electricity. You've got the mainline jobs that the characters specialize in, which is cabbie, electric and fire and whatever, using car batteries to shock people or weird shit like that. Chitose's thing is using dance moves to kind of buff the party, buff herself, heal, do damage, extend distance. You've got some access to the older jobs too. Not all of them. Some of the jobs, like Fortune Teller and whatnot, are gone, replaced by other ones. I think there's a couple of DLC jobs like Linebacker and Tennis Ace or Tennis Pro that do their own things. I did not do that. But by and large, whatever job you feel like you can do, you have access to do that style. And most, by and large, will fit a certain mold. A certain character will be more attack focused. Some people will be more agility. Some people will be more magic or healing focused. As stated, the only thing that's really mandatory is having enough healing to deal with every turn, because you never know when an enemy is going to be strong enough to just waste your shit. And later on, you're going to need that healing way more. I got away from it for a while. I was more attack focused, but I had to change my party back around and use a dedicated healer after a while. So much like the 7th game, it made sense to just have a healer on lock in both parties. It definitely, especially for getting rid of status effects, because status effects can really fuck with your dynamic a little bit, because there's so many that affect you. The shock, paralysis, being stunned, which is the worst one, poison, having a cold, varying versions of taking extra damage, being burned, whatever, being charmed. All of that has an effect, and you can input a lot of different versatility, because you can always upgrade your gear and enhance your gear, or go to a small dungeon and fight in a thing and do the whatever and do all that shit. they don't leave anything to chance. You can do much of anything you want to do. It's crazy. So, what about the side stories? I talked a bit about them. The biggest two, one I really enjoyed, one I was kind of... I'll talk about the one I didn't really enjoy first, which was Sujimon. If you're into Pokemon and understand the Pokemon thing, think of this as really dumbed down. I don't get into Pokemon. I'm not into the collectathon stuff. I don't care about proving I caught them all. You go and catch them all. It's Pokemon. It's Sujimon. It's stuff. It's more that, like, you're locked into fighting the main bosses and you can't really over level. So it's all about strategy and strategery and figuring out which things you have at your disposal that does. Again, if you're into that sort of thing, that's cool. I got frustrated the more I did that sub quest, and I kind of gave up halfway because I was just kind of like, I don't want it. The reward that I looked up isn't going to be better than the thing I wanted because I saved it until then. I was like, okay, this typing does good on this, and it's kind of neat to do that thing. Like, it's cool as a theory, but unless you're into Pokemon and want more of it, I don't really think it's all that great. It's a dumbed down version of a game that I think a lot of people will enjoy and find a lot of intrigue in. And going around beating up dudes and getting them captured with these gifts and whatever is cool, and finding new variants of them and making them stronger. If you understand that system, that's on you. That's your thing. I played one Pokemon game in my life. I played a D&D campaign based on Pokemon. That's all I need to know. I don't know anymore. So I was not as enthralled by it. But if you're into that sort of thing, it's there in Hawaii for you to enjoy. Another Hawaii thing, while a motorcycle comes by and annoys me, just like my air freshener, is the Dondoko Island. So while you're in Hawaii, you get access to Dondoko Island, which is basically Animal Crossing. I wish I'd known how to do it when I first did it, but the essential idea is clearing space and beating up dudes to make access to stuff in either rustic, pop, sleazy, or elegant. I think those are the four categories, and you need to make sure that all four categories are well represented because you need to make guests for this resort. And you can create the buildings, which do the main part of it, because they all fit into those four categories. But you also need new guests to enjoy things. So you need little knickknacks and things that you build each day. So you're going around doing a lot of interesting, cool things each day. You're talking to guests. You're giving them gifts. You're beating up rocks and random dudes and trees and, doing crafting stuff. I've never been into that sort of thing. My real experience with that sort of thing is I played Rune Factory 4 for the 3DS. I played Fantasy Life for the 3DS. I'm happy that either a port of it or a new version of it, Fantasy Life I, is coming out. But for me, I've not really been into like Stardew or Minecraft or Animal Crossing and stuff like that. I've never gotten into it. The reason I got into this one was because Kasuga's the one beating stuff up with a baseball bat. All of the stuff that I'm seeing is, you're building a landmark that you saw in a video game. You're building the convenience store. All of the little ephemera are little street signs or weird things or knickknacks for your house that all are things from the Yakuza universe. That little twist on the thing gave me a bit more interest in doing that thing because I was enveloped in that world already. Now you're giving me more of this stuff in a different way. So I was enthralled by it because you can spend all your time in Dondoko Island all you want, and the game doesn't move. You don't have to go back into the game space at all. You can convert the money you make from Dondoko into more money to spend for stuff. And I found that knowing how to beat Dondoko Island will help me when I have to play this game for YouTube, because now I know, okay, instead of building it all in one weird button, I can go all 4 directions and build them all evenly, so it makes a little bit more sense. So whatever the guests want, I've pretty much covered what they need me to cover for them, so I don't have to worry about it. And by and large, Dondoko is going to take 30 days of time in game, and those days take 20 minutes. So you can just dump everything you're doing, spend hours building things for Dondoko. After a while, once you finish everything and you've built everything and you've done it, really it's just maintenance. But early on, it gets very exciting in how you build and maintain all of the stuff you're trying to build. And then after a while, it just becomes, hey, you can build up your Sujimon, or they can help you do another thing, or you can do more. That's the cool thing, is that you can decide whether to put any effort in at all. It doesn't really matter. If you want to, you can. If you want to change a new job, you can. If you want to focus on the story will take you 20, 30 hours. But like I said, I spent a lot of time just wandering around looking for things to do, whether it was a new side quest or a new story thing or a new memory for Kiryu. And I was just wandering around doing stuff, and I ended up playing the game for 90 hours. But it never felt like I was wasting my time, because even with the slower story bits, I knew I would pay off in the end. And the game actually moves very quickly when you want it to. So you can take as little or as much time doing whatever you want. And again, even if I'm not the biggest Sujimon guy or Pokemon guy, I got into the Dondoko Island thing. If you're not into the Animal Crossing bit, maybe you'll be more into the Sujimon stuff. Maybe you just want to play Soji or Shogi. Maybe you just want to play Mahjong. Maybe you want to play poker. Maybe you want to do whatever. You just want to do a sub-story. You want to get another summon. I want to summon a giant vacuum cleaner to drop on my enemies. You can do that. You can summon people that were from a game you don't even recognize and be like, okay, I didn't play this Yakuza game, but now they're in my attack party. That's kind of neat. I can find this dude. Like, one of the pound mates that actually is one of the more effective ones is a dude in a diaper. This old dude in a diaper screams and everybody is in fear and they lose turns. Don't ask me. And I keep looking at some of the weird shit that I see on the screen, whether it's in the story bits or because the story tends to be very straight-laced and straightforward, and outside of Kasuga's preachiness sometimes, or his unwillingness to hold a grudge, it is a very serious game. So you have this serious story with all this death and guns and knives and, Danny Trejo and shit like that, mixed in with all the weirdness that a Yakuza game can provide you. And then you look at it and you go, yep, that's a Yakuza game. That's a Like a Dragon game. It doesn't take itself too seriously, and neither should I, but I loved every minute of it. So, would I recommend Like a Dragon 8? Well, what do you think? I absolutely adored it, and it is my favorite game. I think it was my favorite game when the 7th one came out. I got more of the same with this one. I absolutely loved this thing. So, yes, I absolutely would. So the next podcast next week will be a little bit shorter. It will be about Speed Grapher. That one I'll actually have to take some effort in actually remembering what it was. I watched it recently. I rewatched it recently, but even then, I don't remember it with as much fervor as I did with this. So you can kind of tell. Going into May, we've got the Mega May stuff again. It'll be our second ever Mega May series for Mega Man. I think it's Mega Man. What was it? It was Mega Man 2, Mega Man 3, Mega Man X3, I think, and then Mega Man 0. If I'm off, I'm trying not to look at my stuff as often as I do, because it's a bit of a distraction whenever I look. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I did it a little off the cuff, and I think I enjoyed it. So every once in a while, I want to try to do an off the cuff episode if I have the knowledge base to where I don't really need to follow the structure so much. And I think it comes and shines through. But again, if you don't know a Yakuza game or like a Dragon game and you want to experience it, is 8 a good one to dive into? Absolutely. Do you have needed to play the other games? No, but it wouldn't hurt to at least get you into the franchise. If this is the one that gets you into the door, I'm happy. But speaking of being happy, I am Citizen Strife, and I'll see you guys next time. So Citizen Strife, signing off.